for the reaction force that the chair is giving, you're going to both feel the chair, right? So you're going to have an action in a particular direction. But when they balance each other force, you're going to have the magnitudes cancelling out because the direction is opposite. So we will say that the vertical forces here are balanced, right? And balanced vertical forces will mean that objects will not rise nor will they fall vertically. So in this situation here, due to the normal reaction arising because of the application of the wind, they are balanced forces because it's neither going up or going down, right? So neither is it going up or is it going down. Alright, so then we can talk about the opposite of balance is unbalanced force. Now an unbalanced force will cause a change in the shape or the size of an object, and they will definitely cause a change in the motion of the object. Right, so when they are unbalanced. For example, I think the cushion changes shape when a person falls on it, right? It causes its shape to change because the forces are not balancing out, right? So when you push it, it does it into spread out or change shape. If there was no presence of an unbalanced force, it would just stay and look the same way. But then that would not be advisable in this case here because the purpose of the safety cushion is to cushion the person fall. If the cushion itself never change in shape, then the person would just bounce off, right? Or just die. Really. Then you have a car, we call it, will change its motion, right? An unbalanced force will change the motion of a car, right? Whenever the car is speeding along, so to speak, right, increasing or accelerating, right, increasing its velocity or speed, there is always an unbalanced force which is acting, right? Whenever the motion or the speed or the velocity is changing, there is always an unbalanced force acting. So there must be acceleration or deceleration. There will be an unbalanced force, right? So if the car is driving along and it meets a stationary object like stop, when because the car is moving, it is applying a force, right? The force will be greater or unbalanced when the car in itself meets the wall or the stationary object. And so you will have this effect that is there, right? A change in the shape of the body, right? So when you have change in shape or change in motion, you know that there is an unbalanced force acting. There is not necessarily any, what should we say? You call it any cancelling out, right? Any cancelling out of any force, or the two things are in opposite direction, really will have the same magnitude. No, one would be greater than the other, right? So you're going to have one which is greater than the other. As we're talking about weight, as I was talking and you were listening, hopefully, we're saying that the weight of the body is due to the force acting on it. And we have already gone through this. Weight is equal to mass times gravitational field strength. We know it is measured in newtons. And we know the gravitational field strength nearer on the surface of the earth is approximated to be 10 newtons per kilogram. Right? 10 newtons per kilogram. So now we are onto something that you would not have gone through before, hopefully. So when we talk about the center of gravity of an object, right? So it says the effective weight of the whole body of an object or the whole body can be best represented by a single net force or a single net force of arrow, W. Right? So usually we represent the weight of the body by symbol W. That's how we are going to represent the weight of the object. Now, the center of gravity of an object is the point through which its entire weight seems to act from. Now, seem to act from, it's not necessarily that it is there, it is all acting from, but whenever it is that you try to balance an object, it is going to seem as if it is going to balance about the center of gravity of an object. And I have seen, I think it was last year's examination paper, where they asked you to define the center of gravity. And whole heap of people could define it. Right? Whole heap of people could define it. Right? So if you're going to define what the center of gravity of an object is, you're going to define it as the point through which the entire weight of the body seems to act. It seems as if that is where the weight of an object will act. That is where it will be pulling downwards vertically. Right? That's where it seems to act. Or it's the point at which the object will balance out. Right? So if you have an object, it tends to balance at the center of gravity. So we know that the weight of the object will act from a point, right? This is basically about the center of the object. But the weight is always acting downwards. So it's always pulling the thing downwards. In order to balance an object, you would have to do what? You would have to exert a force in the opposite direction, which is equal in magnitude, no?
Yes, miss.
Right. Given that you are exerting a force which is equal in magnitude upwards, right, but the weight of the object is pulling downward, then you would have to apply it about this point. For example, a ruler will only balance about its center of gravity. If you have a ruler, right, basically the center of gravity of a ruler or a straight object like that is generally about its geometric center. It will be about its geometric center. So most of our rulers are a 30 centimeters ruler. If you take out your ruler and try and balance it, try and balance your ruler. Balance it about on 10. Just put it on your finger, just like how you see them doing here. Put it on your finger and just leave it there and see if it falls.
It won't.
Did it fall?
Yes, miss, at 10, yes, miss.
Right, it actually fell off because that is not the center of gravity of the object. If you put it about the geometrical center at about 15 and leave it there, you will realize that it's not falling off, right? It may dip in either directions, but it's balanced, it's not falling off. So right at 15, if you put it at 16, it's going to fall off. Or it's going to lean to one side, so to speak. Right? If you put it at 13.
Miss, when I put it right in between 15 and 16, it stays perfectly in the center without dipping.
Perfectly in the center without dipping. That would mean that your ruler your ruler is longer than 30 centimeters. Right? So between 15 and 16, that is where your center of gravity of your ruler would be. Between 15 and 16. Right? Between 15 and 16. So that means the one side of the ruler it's longer on both sides of the ruler in itself.
Yes,
right?
Miss.
My ruler that I am using, it balances literally exactly on 15. Right? So the point through which the object balances, right, or which the weight of the object seems to act is called the center of gravity of an object. How can I find the center of gravity of different types of objects? Right? But if I ask you to define the center of gravity of the object, please use this definition here. Right? On a body is the point through which its entire weight seems to act. That's the definition that you're going to try and use if I ask you to define what the center of gravity is. So each object or each body will have a center of gravity where the weight of it seems to be acting from. Right? Now we can find the center of gravity of an object depending on what type of object it is. If we have a regular or a uniform body or if it is an irregular body. So for the uniform or regular bodies, they have their center of gravity at the midpoint of the bodies or at their geometrical centers. Right? So right at the geometrical centers or their midpoint, we will find the center of gravity of these bodies. Right? For example, if we have this cube here, right, where we find the geometrical center, that would be the center of gravity. Right? Right at its geometrical center. Those things that are uniform bodies are regularly shaped bodies. Right? Their geometrical center would be our center of gravity. Just like our ruler. Our ruler is a regular body. Right? Uniform, so to speak. Adequate amount of side, same amount, a definite amount of angles, And so the geometrical center would be its center of gravity. What was your first lab about?
Area.
Area. This is going to be a second lab, I should say. So basically, if you draw from all of the diagonals, if you draw the diagonals, all the diagonals through this, what you will realize is that when you draw diagonals from the different tips of your regularly shaped objects, it will come to a cross. They will all intersect at a point that is the midpoint of your object, right? That point where they intersect will be your center of gravity. Right? The point at which they intersect is known as the center of gravity of the object. And that is for our regularly shaped objects, right? Or we call them regularly shaped laminas, so to speak. So for our non-uniform or non-regular bodies, they have their center of gravity closer to the heavier or more massive part of their body, right? Closer. So anywhere most of the weight or the mass of the body is, their center of gravity will be closer to that part. And we have a specific way of finding the center of gravity of a lamina. And a lamina is just an irregular shaped body, right? So how we find the center of gravity of our irregular shaped lamina is, say we have this lamina here. It don't have a definite shape. You ever seen that? Don't really have a definite shape.
Yeah.
What you do?
No, miss, I was just responding.
Okay. What you do, you punch 3 holes in different sides of 3 different sections, not necessarily close together. Right? Not necessarily close together like that. Then you put a pin through one of the holes and ensure that the lamina is able to freely swing. I said when punch 3 holes, put a pin through it. That pin, you're going to tie what we call a plumb line. And a plumb line is literally just a piece of string with a bob on the end, or a little mass on the end. The mass can be anything, a stone, right? Anything that is going to cause it to swing back and forth, right? So you're going to hang a weight with a string, right, which you call a plumb line, on the pin, and where that weight, where the line settles, you're going to draw dotted lines on the lamina. So right here you would draw your dotted line, right? And then you do that, you repeat that for each of the holes. So right there you would draw your dotted line. I can't draw a straight line to kill myself, right? Anyways, you draw your dotted lines right there, where the string hangs, right? Beside where the string hangs, right there, you draw your dotted line. And you do the same for all 3 holes, right? Where they intersect, where the lines intersect, will be the center of gravity of the object. And you will realize that where the lines intersect will be closer to the heavier part of the object, right? Because what it's trying to do is really balance out, right? And you're going to get a lot on this, so you don't have to worry, right? To see where you actually see that, yes, this is where it actually balances out. But anyways, so that is, basically how we find the center of gravity. I would say the center of gravity again is where what?
Misses the point through which its entire weight seems to act.
Which its entire weight seems to act. And in what direction is the weight usually acting?
Downwards.
Downwards, right? So the weight is usually acting from this point downwards, right? Very important that we know that. Let's talk about stability. When we say things stable, what we mean? There is something stable. What do we mean?
Is it sturdy and cannot really move?
This is not moving.
It's not moving, right? It is not moving. So we talk about stable or stability. Basically, if we look at these 3 blocks here, right? We have these 3 blocks here that have different heights. Which of the blocks would be more stable?
The first one.
Let's say the first one. which of the blocks will be more stable, right? When we check for stability, what we do is we are saying that if we should apply a small force to each of the blocks, which one of them is most likely to topple over, right? Topple over, drop over to the next side. That's what we talk about when we talk about stability, right? If you apply a small force to the side of the block or to each of the blocks, which one of them will topple over in itself? Now, basically, what we would do to find the block would be more stable, what we would do is we would basically find out where the center of gravity of each of the blocks are, right? So we're going to find out where the center of each of these blocks are. So basically, we would what? Draw, our little diagonals, like so. Right, and the center of gravity will be acting from this point downward. Right? It's the same place. You find the center of gravity here. Pretend as if my lines are straight here. Acting from this point downward. Because, of course, it's acting a straight line. So it is from the point downwards. Perpendicular, it's a perpendicular line to the. And for this, it will be the same thing. To find the center of gravity, like so. Downward. Right? So it will be, so we'll find the center of gravity, and then we'll see how the center of gravity in itself acts on the object. Now, center of gravity of each of these objects here, and find how they are acting, because downwards, and they act normally downwards. There's a straight line downwards that will form a 90-degree angle with the surface that the things are on. Not the base, but the surface that which they are on. Now, when you find where the center of gravity is, where it is acting from, what you're going to do is you're going to look at how it will turn based on where the center of gravity is. Now, what do I mean by this? If we look at the line of action of the weight, we will realize that for the first one here, right, the center of gravity or how the weight will act, right, that line here shows how the weight will act or where the weight will act. We realize that it will do what? It falls within the base of the object, like this, right? It falls within the base of the object. And if it falls within the base of the object, it means that it is going to produce what we call an anti-clockwise moment. Let me explain that. Let us say we had this ruler here. So this is our ruler, right? And on this ruler here, we are going to forsake everything. Let us say we had suspended the ruler from a string right at its center there, right? So the ruler is balanced out and everything. What would happen if we put like a mass on this side? What would happen to the ruler?
Well, it would fall over to the side where the mass is there.
Right? It would fall over to the side, alright? Or if we apply a small mass here, it's going to move downwards. No, so?
Yes, miss.
Alright. If we remove this force or remove that mass, and we have the same ruler suspended like so, and we apply a small mass or a small force to this side, we're going to expect it to do what? Move downwards like this. You see it go?
Yes,
if something is moving like so, right? If it is moving in that direction, we call that turning. When it is moving, like it is going to form a circle, like it's going to move like the handle of the hands of a clock. Don't we call that turning?
Yes.
Turn. Like when you are going to turn something, it's like you're going to twist it, like you're moving it in a circular motion. You're turning it, right? So it's going to rotate. That's what we said. We call it to rotate, right? We're moving in a direction there. That is called rotation, right? So if you kept applying the force like that all the way around, it would turn or rotate in that direction. That is what I mean. Kept applying the force, it would keep rotating. Now, let us say we have the same ruler. Same ruler. same ruler. The weight is acting from the center. We're pretending as if this ruler here is fatter on one side. So the ruler look like this. And it's bigger on one side like so. Right? We know that the weight of the object will always, the center of the gravity will always be to the fatter side. Right? It will always be to the thicker side right here. Right? So let us say no, because the center of gravity is to the thicker side here. It is going to, because the weight is acting from this region here, and let us say we hold over here so stable. Right? But because the weight is acting from this side here, it is going to cause this ruler here to move downwards in that direction. So it's going to turn like that. Right? If you get your ruler, I can show you how you can do it. Have the ruler and just hold the ruler at about 1 centimeter. Just hold it at 1 centimeter. Hold it at 1 centimeter. You're going to use 2 fingers and hold it at 1 centimeter. Right? What would happen if you removed your index finger? What's going to happen?
It would fall.
It will fall over to one side. But why is it going to fall over to that side? That's what I want. Why is it falling over to that side there? I'm going to show you why. Why is it falling over to that side? So you have the ruler and you hold the ruler right here. So, right? You're not balancing the ruler about the center of gravity. You're holding it out at the 1 centimeter mark right here. So, right? You realize that it topples to this side right here. You realize that it's going to turn on this side right here. If you're not balancing it, or if you're not applying a force downwards on this point, you realize that it topples to that side. Why does it topple? It's because the weight is still acting from the center. The weight is still causing it. The center of gravity, then it wouldn't rotate. But because you are not balancing it about the center of gravity, what happens is that that center of gravity, that weight there, is acting like a force pulling it down. Right? The weight there is acting like a force pulling it down, causing it to rotate in that direction. Right? So if it rotates in that direction, we call it an anti-clockwise rotation. Because we know a clock rotates like so. Right? If it goes against the rotation of the clock, we call it an anti-clockwise rotation. Similarly, for this thing right here, for this box, let us say we apply a force in that direction. We apply it and push it like that. We just push the box to the side, to the right side like this. Right? So we tilt the box and we just let it go. Will it fall over or will it go back to its original position here? It's going to
Which one is the first one?
The first one, number 1.
It's going to go back.
It's going to go back to its origin. Because, you see, this line of action of the weight is still within the base. Remember now, the weight is acting in a straight line downwards from the center of gravity. If the line of action of the weight is still within the base of the object, it is going to go back to its original position. It's not going to topple over. So now you displace it a little bit, and the weight or the line of action of the weight, where the center of gravity acts from, is still falls within this lower base right here. It's going to go back to its original position. So we say that it creates what we call an anti-clockwise moment, right? An anti-clockwise turning. That's what all that moment means, right? So it will be stable. The box is stable, hence it will return to its original position. So if you displace the object a little bit and its center of gravity falls within the base or the line of action of the weight of the object falls within the base of the object, it won't topple over. It will just, you will just move it a little bit and then it will fall back to its original position. If you look at this second one here, is it within the base? Is it still within the base? Number 2.
Yes, miss?
Let's go with number 3 first. If you look at number 3, you realize that number 3, when you push it over slightly, it is not this line of action of gravity, the weight of the object is not within the base. So it's not going to turn to this side, rather it's going to turn to this side right here. So when or is it out of the base? It is just on the edge right here. So when you displace this one slightly, it will still be balanced here and it will not turn. So it's just like it going to flip and just stay on this little path right here. Just let catch up on this side. Because the line of action of the base, the line of action of the weight and where the reaction force is right here, they really just balance each other out. So we won't cause any turning. Right? So when it is between the two of them, neither within the base or outside of the base, it's just in the middle there, it's going to cause it to become stable. So, what conclusion we can fall from this is that a body with a high center of gravity tends to be more unstable and will topple over easier. If you look at all three objects, this object has a lower gravity, this has the higher center of gravity. The higher your center of gravity, the more likely you are to topple over when you are displaced slightly. For example, you have some people that drop easy, right? And it's not because of clumsiness. For example, let's just say you're one of those people that you have really big bosoms, right? Right, tiny waist, your waist tiny, your little hips are really kind of tiny too, but your breast is large. The top part bigger, right? We look like a triangle. So we look like a triangle. Right? Big top, small bottom. So what will happen is that you remember, the center of gravity tends to be closer towards the larger part. So, right? The center of gravity tends to be towards the larger part, like that. So what will happen is that when you displace this person slightly, let us pretend that this triangle is as somebody, right? When you displace it slightly, you realize that the line of action of the center of gravity will always fall outside of this base here. So just a little bit, just a little tilting of this type of person will cause them to fall all the way over, right? Versus those persons that have that opposite, they have big bottoms and they look like a triangle. Their center of gravity is always going to be closer to the ground. So when you displace them or push them a little bit, whenever you push them a little bit, their center of gravity is going to fall within their base, and so they tend to be more stable. Bigfoot people tend to be more stable too. Bigfoot, big bottom, those persons, their center of gravity is kind of lower, and so they tend to be more stable. Right? They don't topple or turn over easy. Go ahead. You're going to say something.
Miss, I wanted to ask Miss for the rectangle 3, Miss. What if the weight at the bottom was heavy? Like there was more weight at the bottom compared to the top? Like for example, if you had put a bunch of stones in it, Miss.
Mm-hmm.
It
would be harder to displace in the first place. So whatever force you do, it will be harder to displace. Right, so when you push on if you use the same forces that we're using there, it will be harder to displace. It will be harder to move. So it will tend to just come right back down. The center of gravity will tend to act within the base and it will just fall back over into its original position. So it really depends on if the thing is uniform, if it's uniformly weighted or not. If it's not uniformly weighted and the weight is closer to the bottom end, then it will be more stable than if the weight was closer to the top end.
Okay, Miss, thank you.
It will be more stable at that point there. Right. So we're saying that the object tends to be more stable when the center of gravity is lower. Right? When it has a lower center of gravity, when the center of gravity is closer to the ground, so to speak. So we have 3 types of equilibrium or 3 types of stability, right? We have a stable equilibrium, unstable equilibrium, and neutral equilibrium. For example, stable equilibrium, if when you push it slightly, it returns to its original position. So if you have a cone on the broad end facing downwards, and you push the cone slightly, you realize that it is generally going to just move and then go back to its original position like this. Right? It's going to move and it's going to go back to its position. So you can say that the center of gravity is somewhere right here. And center of gravity will be right there. So even when you displace it slightly, its center of gravity will still be acting in the base. Right? So we say that when you displace the thing slightly and it returns to its original position, it is of stable equilibrium. It will be of unstable equilibrium if when you displace the object slightly and it topples over. So if you put it on the sharp end and you literally actually get it to be stable right there, be in equilibrium, it's not moving to either side. But if you should just tap it just a little bit, where the center of gravity is going to be acting from, or the line of action of the center of gravity, will always fall outside of the base. Right? Because see the base here, this is just the base. This is all that the base is. So the line of action of the center, of the weight in itself always fall outside of the base. And so it's going to drop over easy. For example, if you sharpen your pencil and try and balance your pencil, and it's tip, it's harder to balance. You realize that if you just leave the pencil there, standing on that tip there, it's just going to fall over. That is because the air or the forces that are acting on it, the center of gravity or where the weight acts from, always is outside of the base, outside of the pencil point tip. Line of act of the weight always falls outside of the base. So we say it has unstable equilibrium. So something with unstable equilibrium, it tends to topple over easily when you displace it slightly. When you push it a little bit. That's what I talk about when I say displace it. Right? When you move it a little bit, it tends to topple over easily. And then the third one, we call it neutral equilibrium. So if you put the cone in itself on the side, what you will realize is that if you push it slightly, it will move and it will always remain in its new position. Right? It will just move and remain in its new position. It not topple over, it just will move and turn and remain in its new position. For example, a ball. A ball is always something round, it's always of neutral equilibrium. Because when you roll it, it just rolls and then it moves and then it stops. Right? You don't have a particular side. The base is just always the base. It's always, this line of action of the weight is always through the base. Right? So if it is round, like so, basically when you turn it, it's just going to move and its line of action will always fall within the base. Because it's just the same thing. Right? So it will move first, but then it will always remain in its original position. So we say when they are displaced slightly to the side and they move and remain in their new position, right? Not toppling, not dropping over or anything, then we say they are of neutral equilibrium. Right? They are of neutral equilibrium. Things that we know in nature are really designed with based on how where the center of gravity is and stuff. For example, a race car. For these high performance race cars, you always realize that the wheels tend to be further out. They usually broad at the bottom and have a little cone-like shape at the top right here. Why? Because it makes it more stable. So even when it turns a little corner, it turns a fast corner like that, right? Even when it turns the corner fast and furious or quick, real quick, what will happen is that even if it moves up slightly or tilts slightly to one side, the center of gravity or where the center of gravity is always falls within the base triangle of that object. So it will just go back to its original position. So it won't flip easily. Right? It won't flip easily. So race cars and things like those, cars and stuff like that, they are designed with stability in mind or with the knowledge that things that are broader on the base tends to be more stable, that are things that are broader at the top, right? So the design these race so that the center of gravity can be closer towards the base. If the center of gravity is closer towards the base, then it will be more stable. All right. For example, let us say we have one of them country bus, and you usually see those little bus or vans, and they really, really pack up. Like you really pack up. What is this? What is it? Alright, it's like a truck. It just turned out into a truck. Right? And the truck is it's kind of like that. But when the truck is loaded, like just full of something, and probably you're driving behind the truck, basically, you see when it goes around the corner, you realize it goes around the corner. Right? Because and so if it should tilt just enough, the whole object in itself or the whole truck argument will just drop, fall, turn right over. Right? And that is because when you add load to the truck, you add a lot of load, it raises the center of gravity of the truck. And when you raise the center of gravity of a truck or a van, a car, or whatever, it tends in itself to topple over more easily if you displace it just enough. Right? And that's why they say you also overload vehicle or overload those carry-on things. Because when they overload them, what happens is that they're raising the center of gravity, and if they're going at a certain speed, and they display and they are moving slightly towards one side too much, they will just turn right over. Right? Especially when they are going around corners, right? So especially when they are going around the corners, right? They tend to be able to be displaced more easily. So race cars are designed with mind that things that are broader on the base, they are more stable. So they make them broader on the base and smaller on the top, so they can be more stable. Right? So even in this situation here, you realize that all cars are designed with like a dome shape at the top here. Right? They are literally always broader on the base than at the top here. So that means if they turn a little bit, right, their center of gravity or how the weight of the car acts usually falls within within the base of the car. So it just go back to its original position. And it will really take a lot of effort for you to really topple over the car itself. Right? It really takes a lot of effort to topple over the car. Because even if it falls on the wheel or if you balance it on the wheel, the car generally will have no moment and will just stay on the side. Right? But it really takes a lot for you to topple over a car. And that's why most of the cars are designed with a broader base than at the top. So it becomes more stable. So you rarely see a car just look like a perfect rectangle, top and bottom. No, there is always a slight difference, even if it is a slight difference towards the top, right? So that the center of gravity can be closer towards the base. So if the car has a higher center of gravity, then it will topple over more easily than the car that has a lower center of gravity or center of mass. Right? And that's that for that part. So let us talk about rotation. Rotation or the turning effect of a force about a point. We call that rotation. Effects of a force. Now forces, they are able to change the speed of the motion of an object, and they are also able to change the direction of an object. They are able to change the speed of the object as well as the direction of the object. Any one of them, they are able to change both. Hold on. Alright, so we know that a force can cause many things to happen. Right? It can cause it to move or to stop moving. But it can also cause the object in itself to turn. Right? And whenever an object or whenever a force causes an object to turn, we call that the moment of the force. Right? Whenever a force causes an object to turn, we call it the moment of the force. I can't find my cursor. You see? Sorry, I couldn't find the cursor. Where it gone again? I said what went wrong a while ago. Okay. Isn't that so strange? Oh my. Apparently we have nothing at all. But anyways, forces, as I said, they're able to change the direction or the motion of objects. So if a force is applied at a distance from a pivot, then it will cause the object to rotate. Any point at which the object starts to turn, you call that the pivot or the fulcrum. Right? So the point at which the object rotates or anything, you call that the pivot or the fulcrum. Now, for example, you know what a seesaw is, right?
Yes, miss.
Right. So on a seesaw, you realize that there is always, or there is generally, right? There is generally a point at which it will turn. The point at which an object turns, we call that the pivot or the fulcrum. So if you apply a force away from the pivot or the fulcrum, it is going to cause the object to turn. So anywhere the object is pivoted, if you apply any force some distance away from this pivot, perpendicularly from this pivot, you are going to cause the object to turn in itself. So if you look at this now, for the seesaw, for example, if the pivot is right here and you sit down on this side right here, so, right? What is going to cause? It's going to cause it to turn in this direction. It's going to cause it to move down in that direction. If you have a fatter person now sitting down on the other side, like that, it's going to cause this side of the thing to go down and this side here to come up. Right? So we call it turning. But the point at which the object turns is called the pivot or the fulcrum. Right? The point at which an object turns is called the pivot or the fulcrum. For example, if you're going to use a bottle opener, that's what you're actually doing, you just want the opener to turn. That's what you're trying to do. You're creating a pivot, so to speak. So this part is where the turning is going to take place, right? In the little nook, nook part here, so that you attach the opener to, and then you would apply a force away from the pivot. And if you want to take off the bottle top, you would pull the stop or the bottle opener upwards, right? So when you pull it upwards, it is going to cause everything here to turn upwards. So you open the bottle. You're doing turning the force to the object right here. So you're causing basically the bottle opener to turn, or applying a force, causing it to turn at the pivot, and it's pivoting right here. Right? When you apply this force away from the pivot, right, it's going to cause the object in itself to turn, thus opening the bottle. Right? So the turning effect of a force about a point, and that about the point is the pivot, right, is called the moment of a force, right? It is the turning effect a force will have about a pivot, right? It causes it to rotate, right? So any turning effect there is that it's going to cause it to rotate. So the turning effect of a force about a point is defined as the product of the force and its perpendicular distance from the line of action of the force to the pivot. This is the last thing I'm going to ask you to write. I'm going to ask you to define, or I'm going to ask you to write. You're going to define what the moment of a force is. And to define the moment of a force, this is the definition you're going to use. Is defined as the product of a force and the perpendicular distance from the line of action of the force to the pivot. That is it. If I ask you to define moment of a force, this is the definition I want you to use. Most other things will give. Oh.
Yes, miss.
Say right that. You write that already?
Yes, miss.
Who was that? Because Rashini, that was him?
Yes, miss.
What about the rest of him?
Yes, miss.
Yes, miss.
Alright. So, and anything that we do over here, so we generally can put it in some mathematical form. Right? So, we can put it in mathematical form. So, in order to calculate the moment of a force, what we would do is, and moment is actually T, okay? We represent the moment of a force using the symbol T is equal to F times D. The moment of a force about a pivot. You need to be able to identify the force and it the pivot. Right? Force times perpendicular distance.
Yes, miss.
Right. So if you have the force, if you know the force and you know the perpendicular distance, then you can find the moment about that force. Let us do a sample calculation. This is the last thing we're going to do. This is so you can go and simmer down and read about it and come again. Right? So, if we have a bag of rice and it is placed on the right arm of a beam balance 25 centimeters away from the pivot, what is the moment produced by the weight of the rice? And state the direction of the moment produced. What is the direction, right, of the bag of the rice? Sorry, what is the moment of the rice? By the weight of the rice, because weight is a force, and the direction of the moment. And the direction can either be clockwise or anti-clockwise. Okay? So, it says that a bag of rice is placed on a right arm of a beam balance 25 centimeters away. right? The pivot. So we're going to draw a pivot right here. So, right? Good. So this is the pivot. You can just draw a little diagram to see what's happening. And they're saying that 25 meters away from this pivot to the right. And this is my right. Right? They place a bag of rice of mass 5 kilograms. You see that?
Yes, miss.
So now, they're
Yes, miss.
asking you. So between here and here is 25 centimeters. And they're asking you to find the moment produced by the weight of the force. So moment T is equal to force times distance or displacement, so to speak. Right? Do we know the force that the bag of rice is exerting?
Yes, miss.
We don't know.
5 kg.
5 kg is force or mass. What is force measured in?
Newtons.
Newton.
Newtons. Is 5 kg in newtons?
No, miss.
So then we'd have to find the weight of the rice using the mass of it. So remember, for to find the moment, it must be the moment of a force, right? So even though it is the mass of the rice here, right, we'd have to find what the weight of the rice is, because it is the weight that will be causing the turning effect, right? So the first thing that we would need to do is find the weight of the rice. How do we find weight? How we calculate
Mass.
weight?
Mass times gravitational field.
Right? And what is the mass in this case here?
5 kg.
5 kg.
And what is the gravitational field that we use if we're not told what to use?
10.
10.
Newtons per kg. Kg cancels kg, leave it with newtons. So 5 times 10 is equal to
50.
50.
50 kg. We are going to do one more thing. We are always going to work in SI units, right? So we are going to convert this to meters, okay? So we're going to convert 25 centimeters to 25 centimeters in meters is how much?
1,000.
Which is larger, centimeter or meter?
Meter.
We are going from smaller to larger. From smaller to larger would
Divide.
divide. How many centimeters make a meter?
100.
That means we are going to divide 25 by,
100.
and the answer we get in meters.
0.25 meters.
0.25 meters. Right? So we have found the weight. Hold on. Let me just write it back a little. Bit. Right? So remember, it is always a force. So if you're not given a force and you're given a mass, you have to find the weight of that mass. Okay? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to find the weight. And we're saying weight is equal to mass times gravitation strength, which is equal to 5. Which is equal to 5 times 10. And we know that the answer is newtons. We are also working in SI units, so anything that you see in centimeters, you're going to convert it to meters. So it's going to be 25 cm, and we convert this to meters. That is that divided by 100, and it's going to be equal to 0.25 meters. Right? We are at that point already. So now we need to find the moment produced by the weight of the rice. See the hint here? That is how I know that we need to find the weight. Because it said the moment produced by the weight of the rice. How do we find moment now?
Force times
Force times distance.
Distance. What is the force, or what is the force we are using here?
50 newtons.
50 newtons. And what is the distance of that force from the pivot?
0.25 meters.
Excellent. Right? So 50 times 0.25 gives us
12.5 newtons per meter.
newtons per meter. Newton meter. Right?
Yes,
So it's 12.25 newton meter. And then when we drew I'm like this, the rice was over here. So right, the rice was over here. What direction did it go in? If we
Clockwise.
right, so the weight will be pushing down on the thing in that direction, and if it moves in direction, it is going to be right. If it doesn't side and it was over there, it would be anti-clockwise.
Anti-clockwise.
Right, but because it is moving.
Okay then.